When we first split the atom, we unleashed power that was just unimaginable. But sometimes that incredible power came in a surprisingly small package. This is the story of a simple sphere of metal with one of the most terrifying histories you'll ever hear. So, let's go back in time to the Los Alamos laboratory right at the end of World War II. This place was the absolute epicenter of a scientific revolution. It was just buzzing with brilliant minds, all pushing the known limits of physics. But beneath all that discovery, there was this unspoken, almost unbelievable level of danger. And right at the very center of our story is this thing, just a 6.2 kilogram sphere of plutonium. It was actually warm to the touch, perfectly smooth, and looked deceptively simple. Now, it was originally meant to be the core for a third atomic bomb, but the war ended before it could be used. So instead, it became this object of intense scientific study. But you see, the scientists who actually worked with it, the ones who pushed it right to the edge day after day, they didn't call it by some technical name. No, they gave it a nickname, one that was really born from tragedy and frankly from fear. They called it the Demon Core. And in this explainer, we're going to get into exactly how it earned a chilling name. Our story really unfolds in two distinct acts. Two separate moments, less than a year apart, but both revolving around this one plutonium sphere. So let's start with Act 1, the first warning shot, the first time this so-called demon really showed its face. Okay, so before we dive in, there's one really important concept we have to get our heads around: criticality. The simplest way to think about it is like a nuclear tipping point. See, when the core is below critical, it's relatively stable. But if you push it to criticality, you kick off a self-sustaining chain reaction, and that releases a massive, totally invisible burst of energy. The whole point of these experiments was to see how close they could get to that edge without, falling over it. And here's how it works. It all starts with just one tiny neutron hitting one plutonium atom. That atom splits, and when it does, it releases energy and, this is the key part, more neutrons. Those new neutrons then zip out and hit other atoms, which then split and release even more neutrons, and it just snowballs, an instantaneous explosive cascade of energy. This is the engine of an atomic bomb, and they were trying to study it right there on a lab bench. As you can imagine, trying to control a reaction like that was incredibly delicate and dangerous work. So on August 21st, 1945, we're talking just days after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, a physicist named Harry Daghlian was working late, and he was working alone with the core. The experiment he was doing was, it was elegantly simple and just terrifyingly hands-on. He was literally building a wall of tungsten carbide bricks around the plutonium sphere. Now, each brick he added acted like a mirror for neutrons, bouncing them back into the core, which pushed it closer and closer to that critical tipping point. He was carefully moving the very last brick into position, his hand hovering right over the whole setup. His instruments were telling him that this last brick would take the core right to the very edge of going critical. And then it happened. The heavy brick just slipped. It fell directly onto the plutonium sphere, completely enclosing it. And for just a fraction of a second, the core went supercritical. There was this faint blue glow in the room and a sudden wave of heat. Daghlian reacted instantly, knocking the brick off, but it was already too late. He'd just absorbed a lethal dose of radiation. That invisible burst had done its damage. 25 agonizing days later, Harry Daghlian was dead. He was the first victim of this new, terrifying kind of power. Now, you'd think after a tragedy like that, things would change, right? And they did, on paper. But the hands-on, risk-taking culture of the lab, that was a lot harder to shake. And less than 9 months later, the Demon Core was ready for its second act. So, while the official rules now said to be cautious, use remote tools, spacers, things to keep you safe, a group of physicists led by the brilliant and incredibly bold Louis Slotin, they preferred a much riskier, hands-on approach. They even had a nickname for it: tickling the dragon's tail. Can you believe that? It involved lowering a beryllium dome over the core using nothing but the tip of a flathead screwdriver to keep the two pieces from touching and starting the reaction. So on May 21st, 1946, Louis Slotin is in a room with 7 of his colleagues, showing them this exact technique. This was something he had done dozens of times. He was considered the master of this dangerous art. It was almost routine for him. He was holding the heavy beryllium dome in his left hand, and that fateful screwdriver in his right, just slowly lowering it, listening to the crackle from his radiation detectors. And then, for some reason we will never know, his screwdriver slipped. Just a fraction of an inch. The dome dropped. The gap closed. And just like before, the room filled with a brilliant, eerie blue flash and this intense wave of heat. They had tickled the dragon's tail one too many times. And this time, the dragon woke up. The core was supercritical again. But in that split second, Louis Slotin did something absolutely incredible. Purely on reflex, he lunged forward and ripped that heavy beryllium dome off the core with his bare hands, instantly stopping the chain reaction. In doing so, he took the brunt of the radiation, but he almost certainly saved the lives of every other person in that room. That heroic act was his last. He knew immediately what had just happened. He reportedly turned to his colleagues and just said, "Well, that does it." After a truly horrific physical decline, Louis Slotin died just 9 days later. 2 brilliant scientists, 2 fatal accidents, all from one single sphere of plutonium. The aftermath of Slotin's death was a turning point. It would change everything at Los Alamos.
I mean, the facts are just so sobering when you lay them out like this. 2 men, top of their field, killed within 9 months of each other by the exact same object. And the cause in both cases? A simple, momentary slip of the hand. The outcome was just brutally consistent.
This was the breaking point. This was it. The era of tickling the dragon's tail was officially over. All hands-on criticality experiments were banned immediately. From that point forward, any tests like these would be done remotely, with machines and thick concrete walls keeping the scientists safe from the core. And what about the core itself? Well, it was never used in an experiment again. It was eventually melted down, the material used for other things. But its story, and the 2 lives it claimed, cemented its place in history. It would forever be known by the name that the shaken scientists had given it, the Demon Core. You know, the story of the Demon Core is this powerful, terrifying symbol of our ability to unlock the deepest secrets of the universe. But it's also a permanent, chilling reminder of the risks that come with it. And it raises a question we're still grappling with today. What is the true cost of discovery, and who ultimately is the one who pays the price?